I'm Elizabeth, but most people call me Liz or Lizzie. Some even call me Betty, though I've never been fond of that one. I grew up in what you'd call an ordinary family: mom, dad, and my older sister, Kate. Kate's 7 years older than me, and boy, did that make a difference. From the day I can remember, our house was like a shrine to Kate's existence. Every wall had a picture of her first smile, her first steps, or her scribbled drawings that mom and dad treated like Picassos. Me? I was just there. I got used to it, you know? Wearing Kate's hand-me-downs, playing with her old toys. It wasn't great, but I didn't know any different. I just learned to keep quiet and not make a fuss. As the years went by, the pattern continued. Kate got new clothes, I got her old ones. She got the latest toys, I got the ones she'd outgrown. But I never complained. I just existed. High school came and went. Kate had already moved out by then, off to college on a scholarship. I thought maybe now my parents would notice me more, but nope. It was all about Kate's college adventures, Kate's new boyfriend, Kate's future. Then came the big announcement. Kate burst into the house one Sunday afternoon, all smiles and excitement. "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married," she squealed. You'd think she'd just announced she'd cured cancer or something. Mom burst into tears, Dad started whooping and hollering. Me? I just sat there, wondering if anyone remembered I was in the room. Kate turned to me, her eyes shining. "And Lizzie, you'll be my bridesmaid, right?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sure, Kate. Congratulations." As they all hugged and cried and laughed, I slipped out of the room. No one noticed. They never did. Kate's wedding turned out to be a bigger deal than anyone expected. One evening, I overheard my parents talking in hushed tones in the kitchen. "We'll have to take out a loan," Dad said, his voice strained. Mom sighed. "I know, but it's Kate's big day. We can't let her down." I felt a knot form in my stomach. They were going into debt for Kate's wedding? I wanted to say something, to point out how crazy this was, but I knew better. My opinions didn't matter much in this house. The wedding was a lavish affair. Kate looked like a princess, and our parents beamed with pride. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, feeling invisible as always. After the honeymoon, Kate dropped another bombshell. "I decided to be a housewife," she announced over Sunday dinner. "Jack makes enough for both of us." Mom and Dad exchanged glances. I could see the worry in their eyes, but they plastered on smiles. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said. "If that's what makes you happy." I wanted to scream. They'd taken out a loan for her wedding, and now she wasn't even going to work? But I kept my mouth shut, pushing my food around my plate. It wasn't long before Kate was pregnant. With twins, no less. Our parents went absolutely nuts. "Twins," Dad kept saying, shaking his head in wonder. Can you believe it? I could believe it. I could also believe what came next. "We should help them buy a house," Mom suggested one night. "They'll need the space with 2 babies on the way." Dad nodded. "We could make the down payment on a mortgage. There's that nice place not far from here." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Are you serious?" I blurted out. "You're already in debt from the wedding, and now you want to buy them a house?" They both looked at me like they'd forgotten I was there. Maybe they had. "Elizabeth," Mom said, her voice stern. "This is what family does. We help each other." The twins were born a few months later. 2 little boys, cute as buttons. Mom and Dad were over the moon, spending every free moment at Kate's new house, cooing over the babies. Meanwhile, I was finishing up high school, trying to figure out my next steps. College was the obvious choice, but how was I going to pay for it? One night, I worked up the courage to ask. "Mom, Dad, I've been looking at colleges." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, not looking up from the photo album of the twins she was putting together. I was wondering, could you help me with tuition? They exchanged that look again. The one that said they'd rather be talking about anything else. "Well, sweetie," Dad started, "we'd love to help, but with the loan for Kate's wedding and helping with the house." "We can cover half," Mom jumped in. "But you'll need to figure out the rest on your own." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Half? That's all they could do? After everything they'd done for Kate? But I knew arguing was pointless. "Okay," I said, my voice small. Thanks. As I walked back to my room, I heard them resume their conversation about the twins' latest accomplishments. I closed my door, leaned against it, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry. I'd managed to get into the local community college, not my dream school, but the only one I could afford with my parents' measly contribution. To make up the difference, I landed a part-time job at a nearby diner. Let me tell you, waiting tables while trying to keep up with college coursework is no picnic. I'd drag myself home most nights, dead on my feet, dreaming of my bed. But even that small comfort was often yanked away from me. It started one Friday evening. I'd just finished a brutal shift and was looking forward to face planting into my pillow when I walked in to find Kate in our living room, the twins crawling around her feet. "Oh, Lizzie," she exclaimed. "Thank God you're here. I'm at my wit's end with these two. Mind watching them for a bit? Jack and I haven't had a date night in ages." Before I could even open my mouth, she was out the door, leaving me with two screaming 3-year-olds. "What the hell?" I muttered, staring at my nephews. Don't get me wrong, I love the little terrors, but this wasn't what I signed up for. Mom wandered in from the kitchen. "Your sister is exhausted. This is what family does. Besides, it'll be good practice for when you have your own kids." I wanted to scream. Kids? I was barely keeping my head above water as it was. This became a regular occurrence. Every weekend, without fail, Kate would show up, drop off the twins, and disappear. Sometimes she'd claim she had errands. Other times, she and Jack would go catch a movie or grab dinner. And every time, I'd end up playing babysitter. One Saturday, after a particularly hellish week of exams, I'd had enough. Kate had just breezed out the door, leaving the twins mid-tantrum. "Mom, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't fair. I'm exhausted, I work, I study, and now I'm expected to give up my weekends too?" Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "Lizzie, your sister needs the help. You should be glad to do it." "But what about what I need?" I protested. "I'm running myself ragged here." Mom sighed. "Elizabeth, don't be selfish. Kate has 2 children to look after. You don't know how hard that is." I gave up. It was clear they weren't going to listen. So I resigned myself to my fate, classes during the week, work in the evenings, and unpaid babysitting on the weekends. Personal life? Huh. That was a joke. The closest thing I had to a social life was making small talk with customers at the diner. Dates? Forget about it. Between work, study, and the twins, I barely had time to shower, let alone meet someone. I was at my breaking point. The constant juggle of work, school, and forced babysitting had left me drained, both physically and mentally. I needed a break, a real one, away from everything and everyone. So, I made a decision. "Mom, Dad," I announced one evening, "I'm taking a few days off. Going to the beach." Their reaction surprised me. For once, they actually seemed happy for me. "That's wonderful, Lizzie," Mom exclaimed. "Where are you going?" I told them about the cheap motel I'd found online, right by the ocean. Nothing fancy, but it was all I could afford. Dad nodded approvingly. "Good for you, kiddo, you deserve a break." I almost fell over from shock. Was this really happening? Were they actually acknowledging my needs for once? The day finally came. I packed my bag, hopped on a bus, and felt the weight lifting off my shoulders with every mile that passed. When I finally arrived at the coast, I couldn't believe my luck. The motel was small and a bit run down, but the ocean view was spectacular. I dropped my bag in the room and headed straight for the beach. The salty air filled my lungs, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I treated myself to lunch at a cute little seaside cafe, savoring every bite. No screaming kids, no homework, no customers to please. Just me, my thoughts, and the sound of the waves. As the sun started to set, I headed back to the motel, already planning my evening of peaceful solitude. But as I approached my room, I heard familiar voices. "Surprise, Lizzie." I froze. There, standing outside the room next to mine, were Mom and Kate, with the twins running circles around their legs. "What are you doing here?" I stammered, my heart sinking. "We couldn't let you be all alone on your vacation," Mom chirped. "So we decided to join you. We're right next door." I noticed their suitcases outside one of the nicer rooms. Of course, they'd splurged on themselves while I was in the budget option. Before I could process what was happening, Kate was pushing the twins towards me. The boys have been dying to see the ocean. You don't mind watching them for a bit, do you? I want to take a walk on the beach. And I need to run to the store, Mom added. We'll be back soon. Just like that, they were gone, leaving me standing there with two overexcited 3-year-olds tugging at my hands. What followed was the worst vacation of my life. The twins were out of control, tearing around my small room like tornadoes. They ripped the curtains, broke glasses, and somehow managed to clog the toilet with apples. I had to shell out money I didn't have for repairs and to call a plumber. By the end of the weekend, I was more exhausted than I'd ever been. The final straw came when Kate had the audacity to complain about how tired she was from all the traveling. I lost it. The argument that followed was epic. I yelled, Mom cried, Kate sulked, and the twins screamed through it all. I packed my bags that night and caught the first bus home in the morning. As I watched the coastline disappear behind me, I felt something shift inside. This couldn't go on. Something had to change. I dragged myself through the front door, exhaustion weighing heavily on my shoulders. Dad was in his usual spot, eyes glued to the TV. He barely grunted a hello as I passed. I crashed into bed that night, my mind a whirlwind of emotions and half-formed plans. When morning came, I knew what I had to do. I was halfway through packing my suitcase when I heard the front door slam. Mom's voice rang out, sharp and irritated. Elizabeth, where are you? She appeared in my doorway, face flushed with anger. I can't believe you just left us there. Do you have any idea how difficult it was to manage the twins on our own? I bit back a retort about how I managed the twins on my own all the time. Instead, I just kept packing. Mom's eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. What are you doing? I'm leaving, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm moving out, I need my own life. Their reactions were immediate and predictable. How can you be so selfish? Mom cried. After everything we've done for you. Dad's face turned red. You ungrateful girl. Have you thought about your sister? Who's going to help her with the twins? I felt something snap inside me. My sister? What about me? When has anyone in this family ever thought about what I need? Elizabeth, Mom gasped. No, I'm serious, I pressed on. Kate has a husband. Let him help with the kids. I need to focus on my own life. You listen here, young lady, Dad growled. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to keep paying for your college. You'll be on your own. I looked at them both, these people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. In that moment, I realized they were strangers to me. Fine, I said, zipping up my suitcase. I'd rather be on my own than live like this. No personal life, no time for myself, just constant demands and screaming kids. I'm done. I pushed past them, dragging my suitcase down the stairs. They followed, still shouting, but I tuned them out. As I reached for the door handle, Mom made one last attempt. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Then, without looking back, I opened the door and stepped out into the unknown. The next few weeks were a blur. I crashed on a classmate's couch while scrambling to find a more permanent solution. Eventually, I connected with a girl from my study group who was also looking for a roommate. We found a tiny apartment that we could just barely afford between the two of us. With my parents cutting me off financially, I had to pick up more shifts at the diner. I was working almost full-time on top of my classes. There were nights I thought I wouldn't make it, when the exhaustion was so deep I could barely think straight. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I felt free. No one was making demands on my time. No one was guilting me into babysitting or putting their needs before my own. The apartment was small, my bed was a mattress on the floor, but it was mine. I threw myself into my studies with a determination I didn't know I possessed. Every all-nighter, every missed social event, every extra shift, it was all working towards my goal. My future. Before I knew it, 2 years had passed. As I sat in the auditorium on graduation day, waiting for my name to be called, I scanned the crowd. A small part of me hoped to see a familiar face, Mom, Dad, even Kate. But the seats I'd reserved remained empty. Life after college was like stepping into a whole new world. I landed a job at a marketing firm, and suddenly, I had a steady income that wasn't just scraping by. For the first time in years, I could breathe easy. I rented my own apartment, nothing fancy, but it was all mine. No roommates, no family drama, just peace and quiet. And let me tell you, it was glorious. I started doing all those normal things I'd missed out on before. I went on dates, made new friends, even had a couple of short-lived relationships. Nothing serious, but it was fun to just be young and carefree for once. My parents? They were still in the picture, but barely. We talk maybe once a month, stilted conversations full of awkward silences and thinly veiled disapproval. They were still sore about me moving out, and I wasn't exactly rushing to mend fences. Then came my 25th birthday. I had plans with friends, nothing wild, just dinner and drinks. But a week before, I got a call from Mom. "Elizabeth," she said, her voice oddly cheerful, "we want you to come over for your birthday. The whole family will be there." Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I arrived at my parents' house, it was like stepping back in time. Kate and her husband were there, the twins, now 7 years old, running around like little tornadoes. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins milled about, all smiles and hugs. "Happy birthday, Lizzie," they chorused as I walked in. I plastered on a smile, accepting hugs and well wishes. Then came the gifts. Most were typical: clothes, books, gift cards. But then Mom handed me an envelope with a flourish. "This is from all of us," she said, beaming. I opened it, my stomach sinking as I saw what was inside. A ticket to a beach resort. "We're all going," Dad announced proudly. "A big family vacation. We've paid for everything." I froze. A family vacation with the twins? It was my ruined beach trip all over again. I opened my mouth to refuse, but Mom squeezed my arm, whispering harshly, "Don't you dare make a scene. Not in front of everyone." So I smiled and thanked them, all the while screaming internally. The party wound down, relatives trickled out, and finally, it was just us, me, Mom, Dad, Kate, and her family. That's when I let loose. "I'm not going," I said flatly. "What?" Kate gasped. "But it's a family trip." "Exactly," I replied. "And I'm not interested in spending my vacation babysitting your kids again." Kate burst into tears. "You don't love us at all, do you? You don't care about your nephews?" "I care about them just fine," I snapped. "But if I wanted kids, I'd have my own." The argument went round and round. Mom called me ungrateful, Dad looked disappointed, Kate kept crying. They all tried to guilt me, to pressure me into giving in. "Fine," I said finally, my voice tired. "I'll go." They all looked relieved, like they'd won some great victory. But they had no idea what was coming. The day of departure arrived, and I found myself at the airport, surrounded by my overly cheerful family. Kate and her husband were practically bouncing with excitement, already making plans for all the alone time they'd have while I watched the twins. "You'll have so much fun with Aunt Lizzie," Kate told the boys, winking at me. "She'll take you to the beach, build sandcastles, maybe even go snorkeling." Mom and Dad were beaming too, going on about how nice it would be for Kate to have a break. Not once did anyone ask what I wanted to do on this vacation. It was clear they all saw me as nothing more than a convenient babysitter. As we approached the check-in counter, I made my move. "Oh," I exclaimed, feigning discomfort. "I need to use the restroom." "You guys go ahead and check in. I'll meet you at the gate." They nodded, distracted by wrangling luggage and excited children. I watched them join the queue, then turned and walked briskly in the opposite direction. My heart was pounding as I approached a different check-in counter. I handed over my passport and the ticket I'd bought weeks ago, a flight to a small, peaceful island resort. Once through security, I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. My hand shook slightly as I typed out a message to Mom, "I'm not coming with you, I'm going on my own vacation. Enjoy your trip." I hit send and immediately turned off my phone, not wanting to deal with the fallout just yet. I could almost hear the explosion of anger and disbelief that would be happening at the other check-in counter. As I settled into my seat on the plane, I turned my phone back on briefly. It immediately exploded with notifications, missed calls, voicemails, angry texts. I listened to one voicemail from Mom, her voice shrill and furious. "Elizabeth Morgan. How dare you abandon your family like this? You've ruined everything. Your sister is in tears, her husband is furious, they were counting on you to watch the boys. And I had plans. You are the most selfish, ungrateful. As the plane took off, I sipped my champagne and gazed out the window. The guilt was still there, a small knot in my stomach. I knew I'd have to deal with the fallout eventually. There would be angry phone calls, tearful accusations, probably another round of being called selfish and ungrateful. But overwhelmingly, I felt free. Light. Like I could finally breathe. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was going on a trip that was just for me. No obligations, no babysitting, no family drama. Just me, the beach, and whatever I decided I wanted to do. As the plane touched down on the small, tropical island, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The warm breeze that greeted me as I stepped off the plane seemed to whisper, "Welcome to freedom." I checked into my resort, a modest but charming place right on the beach. As I unpacked, curiosity got the better of me, and I turned on my phone. Instantly, it exploded with notifications. Hundreds of text messages, missed calls, and voicemails flooded in. With a mix of amusement and trepidation, I scrolled through some of the messages. How could you do this to us, Mom? You ruined everything, Kate. You're so selfish, Elizabeth, Dad. I couldn't help but smile. For once, I had chosen myself over their demands. I turned the phone off again and tossed it into the hotel safe. For the next week, I was unreachable. And what a week it was. I lounged on the beach, read books uninterrupted, went snorkeling, and even tried my hand at surfing. I chatted with other vacationers, went on a few casual dates, and stayed out as late as I wanted. No schedule, no responsibilities, no screaming kids. Just me and the rhythm of the waves. All too soon, it was time to head home. I returned to my apartment tanned, rested, and more centered than I'd felt in years. But the real world was waiting to intrude on my newfound peace. The very next day, there was a pounding on my door. I opened it to find Mom and Kate, faces red with anger. How dare you? Mom screeched, barging in without invitation. Do you have any idea what you've done? Kate wasn't far behind. You ruined our entire vacation. The boys were devastated. They launched into a tirade, their voices overlapping as they hurled accusations and insults. I was selfish, ungrateful, a terrible daughter and sister. I owed them for the ticket they'd bought me, for the vacation I'd ruined, for the childcare I'd failed to provide. I let them rant for a few minutes, their words washing over me without sticking. Then, calmly but firmly, I spoke. That's enough, I said, my voice cutting through their noise. I don't owe you anything. Not money, not childcare, not my time. I'm an adult, and I get to make my own choices. Mom opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. I'm not discussing this further. Please leave. When you're ready to treat me with respect and have a calm conversation, we can talk. Until then, I think it's best we don't communicate. They stared at me, shocked into silence. Then, with a few more choice words, they stormed out. As the door slammed behind them, I let out a long breath. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. Over the next few weeks, I made some big changes. I found a new apartment in a different part of town and moved without telling my family my new address. I threw myself into my work and picked up some new hobbies, painting, yoga, even started learning a new language. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, pangs of guilt. But every time I came home to my peaceful apartment, every time I made plans without worrying about babysitting duties, every time I pursued a new interest just because I wanted to, I knew I'd made the right choice. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday, my family and I will find a way to have a healthy relationship. Maybe not. But I do know this, I'll face whatever comes on my own terms, standing tall and unapologetic in the life I've chosen for myself.